It's that time again. Another fairy tale chapter has dropped as 100 Years Quest chapter 198 has officially come out. And I like this chapter. I do have obviously my nitpicks and critiques of it, but I think overall I like what we got this chapter, as well as the explanations of Natsu's new power-up, as I feel like it makes things more interesting, and this might actually be the strongest form of Natsu that we'll ever get, barring maybe a full END or brand new Dragon Force form. But still, it is a really cool mode that he's got right now, and I'm excited to talk about it. But obviously, before we jump into the actual chapter, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy what I make here on the channel, and shows you want to see more. And if you want to see me talk about a lot more different manga, go and check out my weekly manga podcast, Shonen Pulse, on the Panel Focus YouTube channel, where me, Nox, Yatogami, and Papa Trophy talk about 9 different manga from 3 different magazines every single week. It's a lot of fun. We go very in-depth on these chapter discussions, and I really do think you guys would enjoy it if you checked it out. I also have another channel, my second channel, GW Comics, where I talk about comic books, American comic books. Right now it's more DC focused, but I'm planning to get more into Image and a bit more of Marvel when the time comes. I have a lot of stuff I want to do on that. That is more of a passion project I'm doing off on the side from this. So I really appreciate if you guys go and check it out whenever you get the chance and have the free time. Links to that channel and my podcast will be in the description down below. Now then, let's jump right into this chapter. So chapter 198 of Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest, titled Bestia's Recollections, with the cover image being of Erza and Natsu in a gym, with Erza beating the crap out of a punching bag. I love it. Every second of it. Perfect. But anyway, the chapter starts off directly from last chapter, with Natsu gaining this new flames that he ate from Bestia. And he is still engulfed in constant flames. Even his scarf is billowing in an insane pure fire, as Loxus is confused as to what kind of magic he has, with Natsu saying it's crazy strong though, as he's wondering what these flames are anyway. But Bestia then begins to explain, saying, in a way, they are IGNEEL'S. Well, she learned that afterwards, which shocks Natsu and Loxus, as she begins to talk to Natsu, saying his full name, obviously saying that he is a Fire Dragon Slayer of the Fairy Tail Guild, and younger brother of Emperor Spriggan. Haven't heard that name in a while, especially Natsu, as Loxus has to remind him that's what Zeref was called, as Bestia says that Natsu and Bestia have technically met before, as Natsu's wondering where exactly it was, with Bestia saying, search your memories thoroughly for the time when you used IGNEEL'S power, as Natsu begins to think back on IGNEEL'S power and remembers the time he unleashed IGNEEL'S fire against Zeref the first time, the flames, the last embers of IGNEEL'S power and feelings and resolve that he bestowed upon Natsu, that Natsu had forged through his whole year of training to its maximum potential, as obviously we got the dragon tattoo on his arm. I love that callback, as I do think that was probably the strongest version of Natsu to date, and I'll get into that in a minute. Now Natsu is obviously shocked about remembering all that, but doesn't remember anything about her, as Bestia says, oh no, I was there when you were fighting Zeref the first time, as we got a bit of a flashback panels to the nameless soldiers that was aiding Zeref's army, one of them obviously being a human Bestia. As Natsu surprised, wait, you were in Zeref's army? With her saying, at the time I was researching residual magic. I was fascinated by the power of IGNEEL'S that you left behind, and so I made his magic mine. Though that doesn't mean I can utilize the power as he did. So, quick pause there. First off, oddly convenient that Bestia was a part of Zeref's army and a magic researcher researching in residual magic power. Obviously, residual magic isn't anything new. This has happened in a few instances in Fairy Tail's past, but now we're getting confirmation of someone researching this stuff. But obviously, Bestia being in Zeref's army is a big reveal, but also incredibly convenient that she was there not only for Natsu unleashing flames that massacred a good chunk of his that the force that Zeref was leading in that section of the war, but also that she was far enough away to survive. So, yeah, coincidence and convenience in that aspect. That is definitely a nitpick, but that it is what it is. But she basically talks about how she basically found the residual bits of magic power after Natsu used it all up in that instance, and managed to contain it and did research on it. Being able to utilize that power, but most likely because of, I would say, rejection of the magic, or it being not compatible with her, the power of IGNEEL was not at the power that it should have been, which explains why she's not as strong as Ignia, or even to a high enough degree, which explains why she isn't, all that strong. So that I can buy. It does take a bit of, suspension of disbelief to a degree, but I can kind of buy somebody forcefully taking residual magic that never belonged to them, trying to use that for themselves, and it not working the way it should and having the same oomph that it did in the past. I can understand that. It's same logic of lightning mode Natsu. He wouldn't be able to use the power of lightning dragon slayer magic as well and as strong as Loxus is, but it is strong enough for him to utilize it to a certain degree. But back to the chapter. After Bestia was utilizing IGNEEL'S power, most likely after the war had ended, Ignia found her, somehow, again, convenience. But Natsu says, I'm not really getting it. That's some story, though, as even Misfortune says that this is a coincidence. But Natsu gets up in her face and says, after I used IGNEEL'S magic that day, you restored it, and I just ate it now? With Bestia confirming that, as Natsu is beginning to cry because now he's basically got what IGNEEL left him in the past back again, which honestly is kind of sweet. With Natsu just obviously being Natsu, saying like, thanks, you're really a good person, huh? Which, Natsu, I love you, but man, you can be such an idiot, especially in 100 Years Quest. But Bestia says, I didn't expect this power to return to you, as you then get immense rumbling within the space. With Bestia getting serious, saying, Ignia told me not to kill you, but you're a threat to him now with that power, and so I have to eradicate you for his sake. Now, I hope we get a backstory for, Bestia being found by Ignia and why she's going to such lengths for Ignia. I feel like this could be something if we really dive into it, but for now, I don't think we will. But as she declares this, unleashing all of her magic power to kill Natsu, with Loxus and Natsu getting serious, Natsu says, well, you worked for Zeref in the past, and now you work for Ignia, with Bestia being like, yeah, what's your issue? As Natsu just says, serving them ain't fun, is it? Guilds are better. Nobody's above or below anybody. With Loxus chiming in saying, Makarov might be our master right now, but he's more like a dad than a boss to us. I feel like this is definitely like a fallback on Natsu trying to spread the love of being in a guild and the joy of being in a guild every chance he gets. And I get that is part of his character and how he tends to see and view the world and people being like a family instead of serving under people, because that kind of stifles people's like freedoms and them being who they are. But I feel like bringing it up, especially in this instance, I'm not entirely sure if it's thematically relevant at this point. Then again, I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments if I'm misremembering or mischaracterizing some aspects of Natsu's character. I need to dive back into that. But yeah, I feel like that is like just meant to kind of like, fill out space in the chapter. But Bestia tries to silence them, unleashing a barrage of flame pillars to try and burn them all, with Loxus telling Misfortune to try and open up a portal to leave the dimension, but she can't. The dimension is sealed off. It is obviously controlled by Bestia, as she's not going to let them escape. But it's then that Natsu, in a really epic panel, ends up throwing up his right arm, saying, came back to me, Igneel. As we see the dragon mark appearing on his right arm again, as in a 2-page spread, he unleashes Fire Dragon King's Demolishing Strike. A move that he hasn't used since his first fight with Zeref, as he one-shots and blows Bestia away with no effort. With her knocked out and out of commission, Misfortune can now open up a portal to get them out of there. But Natsu, in that instance, felt something, as his flames disperse, and he falls unconscious, as Loxus goes to grab him. With Bestia barely conscious, says, naturally, he rapidly ingested all that power, as the two of them end up getting out of there. Now, this is something I do want to dive into. Natsu, biggest feat of strength yet, very easily knocked out Bestia. I know she was injured previously, but still, that was just an easy blow, and him getting the power that he had in the past back to him the way he is now is really interesting, and I do want to make this a separate video in and of itself, because I can really dive further into the power dynamic with Natsu's flames from the past coming to him now. But either way, Fire Dragon King mode, Natsu in Alvarez, true Fire Dragon King mode, that is what I'll dub it, was definitely Natsu's strongest form to a degree, because it was flames hot enough and strong enough to, even to Zeref's surprise and joy, that could kill him. Flames strong enough to kill an immortal. That is something insane. Natsu wasn't even able to really properly beat Zeref at the end of the series. We had to rely on Mavis and Zeref's own curses doing them in. So yeah, this is probably peak Natsu right here. Now, as to his flames disappearing, this could obviously due to the fact that Natsu hasn't gotten used to this power yet. Because remember, for in the past, the flames of Ignia that Natsu had, it took him a year to fully master and condense that power. But now he ingested all that at once and used a full blow strike to take down Bestia. So it's probably just a clash of gaining that massive amount of power, but not being able to fully control and harness it after gaining and using it in such a short amount of time. Natsu will probably have to adjust to that power now. That's my guess, at least. But I have to say, a nice touch for Natsu to finally have that mark back when he uses that power. I love that dragon mark. It's so freaking cool. But anyway, we jump into the portal of Aqua Rea to get out of Bestia's dimension and back to where Team A is, to where Erza and the others are, as they're still slowly being turned into dragons. They're glad Natsu's back, but are also shocked that Loxus is there. But it's then that Osaria tells them why they're being dragonized, in that it's the ground. The ground is what's turning them into dragons. If they touch it, they'll start to turn into them. Which, I am so glad we got that explanation, because when we cut to Alderaan and Team B fighting against the demons on behalf of the Irration Seis, none of them had turned into dragons, even though Alderaan is the epicenter of the magic power spell circulating the continent. But this does confirm that you have to be literally on the ground for that to be the case. Since they are on Alderaan, which is technically not the ground but a living thing, they are not affected by that spell. I know, technicalities and stuff like that, but that's a good enough explanation to explain why these characters aren't turning into dragons, while these other characters in the rest of the continent are turning into dragons, and why Ferris in the air wasn't turning into a dragon. So at least as long as they're in the air, they are fine. As long as Natsu and Loxus are in the air, they're not going to turn into dragons. Also, yes, I'm not going to forget to mention this. Fortune holding Loxus almost feels like Mashma's confirming that she is going to be the Exceed for Loxus. So I'm honestly really good about that. But they end up saying that Alderaan is the one that basically is the source of this. So if they stop him, then this should all end. And they're running out of time, so they're going to be dragonized soon. Lucy asks if Natsu's okay, but Loxus just says he ate way too much. Erza tells Loxus that Ignia and Selene, as well as Ferris too, are with Alderaan. So that's going to be a whole thing. Them saying that Ignia is at Alderaan makes me believe that while Ignia disappeared, the Cloudway Bloods are being left to their own devices. Ignia probably went to Alderaan to kind of settle things, I guess, and to make things go quicker. Maybe we'll actually get the Ignia versus Ferris fight. But still, that's an interesting thing to talk about. Loxus confirms this and says, "Time for me to repay my debt. I got this one," with Natsu. With Loxus being in the fray, full power, ready to take on the antagonists. And that ends the chapter. I will glaze Loxus for a full minute now. I cannot wait to see him fight now, because Loxus is insanely strong. Definitely top 3, top 5 of the verse, and I'd say outside of maybe Gray and Erza, the closest to being at Natsu's level of power. Because if I can believe any other character besides Natsu to really go the ones for at least a little bit against a dragon god, it would be Loxus, due to how he got a power up during the Labyrinth arc. And I guess Loxus is paying back his debt, more so about, the trouble he caused after being brainwashed, so there's that. Either way, I'm excited. Natsu's knocked out, and I feel like once he wakes back up, he'll have a better handle on his Igneal flames, and thus he'll end up being able to fight Ignia. The fact that Bestia acknowledges Natsu as a threat now to Ignia shows how big of a power-up he got from eating his own original Igneal flames that he had from 2.5 years ago in the story. That is a big thing to really consider. Loxus being at full power, not exhausted, going over to where Selene and Alderaan were fighting, with Ignia and Ferris being there now, that is definitely something that I'm looking forward to. But this also means we'll most likely in the next 2 chapters get the conclusion of Ganjo versus Zero, and then we'll get the Dragon God fights over and done with before Ferris and Ignia show up to see what else is going on. So I'm excited to see what happens next. But what do you guys think of this chapter? Obviously, I had some nitpicks, and conveniences happened in this chapter. A lot of conveniences and some, headcanon-esque things and suspension of disbelief for certain aspects of this chapter and information. But I enjoyed it nonetheless, and I think this was a pretty solid chapter. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think about this chapter? How do you feel about the origins of Bestia's flames? How do you feel about Natsu's power-up now, it being basically his original powers just being added on to his current self? And are you excited to see Loxus in action? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. With all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.